He may well be the most admired Canadian. Rick Hansen. It's been almost 30 years since he circled the globe to raise funds for spinal cord research, a cause his foundation continues to pursue today. Obviously, it's a cause close to his heart. He was paralyzed as a teenager, but in the years since has raised millions and become an inspiration for the hopes of thousands. He's had numerous awards, including the highest level of the Order of Canada, induction into the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame.
Rick Hansen plays guard.
And a multiple gold medal winner at the Paralympics. He's dedicated his life to improving the lives of others. I talked with Rick Hansen in Toronto. I want to throw some facts and figures at you.
Yeah.
Because I find, some of them puzzling, some of them actually disturbing. Let's start with this one, and this comes from both I think the Rick Hansen Foundation and Statistics Canada. 1 in 7 people in Canada live with a disability. Mm-hmm. The forecast is for 1 in 5 in 20 years.
Yeah, amazing.
Now, that doesn't sound like progress.
That's a reality of aging baby boomers, and what you're finding is that aging baby boomers are having disabling conditions as they age, and not all disabilities are easily identifiable, and people are unwilling to declare that they have a disability as a normalized fact of life because of fear of stigma, that somehow they'll be labeled and persecuted. And that's even backed up by a recent study with Angus Reid that 50% of Canadians really they feel it's justified to be skeptical or cautious about hiring people with disabilities because they're high risk.
Well, that's one of the other figures that I was going to bring up, and that is the disturbing one.
Yeah.
And you wonder, how do you combat that? I mean, this didn't just happen.
Right.
We didn't just start talking about people with disabilities in the last year or two. Why are we at that figure, 50% of Canadians?
Well, what we do is we see progress in awareness and our attitudes and our support for the normalization of people with disabilities.
How do you do that?
Well, you constantly show the examples of success. You constantly pull out the emerging research that studies and analyzes, that people with disabilities actually make good employees and that they're reliable. And whether it's Tim Hortons, hiring people with disabilities, or Walgreens being able to take one of their distribution plants in the States, hiring over 30% people with disabilities and being the most profitable, productive, and inclusive plant in their history. And these are big stories that need to be highlighted and exposed. And then ultimately, we have to make sure that this becomes an economic opportunity and an imperative for Canada to be sustainable and competitive in a global society.
Let's move it out of the boardroom into the general public, and a discussion about attitudinal change.
Yeah.
Is it actually happening out there in the public at large, in terms of an acceptance and an understanding of an equal partnership with those with disabilities?
Yeah, I think that is happening. There's no question. I mean, you look at the current government and, the Minister of Sport, who's in Rio right now for the Paralympics Games, is Carla Quattro, and she's an amazing Paralympic champion, but she's a political leader, and she's the Minister of Sport and the Minister of Disability. And I see that as a really powerful statement. Sport has always been, in my view, a mirror for how society views itself. You're seeing MLAs, in provincial legislature, community leaders, people in business, people, being promoted in the Paralympic Games as athletes. And all these examples are precipitating change, but is it fast enough? No. We have to continue to emphasize this. And I think what's really important going forward is that we don't lose sight of it. We don't have to wait for some crazy Canadian to wheel around the world to draw attention to this issue. It becomes part of the Canada we want, the DNA of our country. And how are we doing? And make sure that we can report back to Canadians who are shareholders in this dream that we're making progress, because disability affects everybody.
Well, what you're getting at there is accessibility, right?
There's no question. If people can get into a restaurant and be employed, not just be a customer, if they can actually go to vote and be a political leader or get into the stage at their local school and be an actor. Maybe we won't have to hire able-bodied actors to play people with disabilities to win Academy Awards in the future. Maybe we'll see, the day when young actors with disabilities, people like Michael J. Fox, in a younger version, will be employed because of their ability, and they've been pioneered in those early school days because it's inclusive and accommodating. And it's not just in Canada. This is a global dream, and I'm not going to give up on it, absolutely.
Many Canadians will say, man, we've come actually a long way on accessibility.
Yeah.
You look around, you see the cut curbs, you see the situation with elevators for those who are confined to wheelchairs to be able to move around. Have we actually come a long way?
Yeah, there's no question we've come a long way, but we haven't gone far enough. And there are still big challenges here in Canada and around the world.
Like what?
Well, there's no question. In our charter came back in '82. We talked about that in our charter, in our constitution, this is the Canada we want. People with disabilities, part of this country. Well, have we backed that up with a legislative framework and a safety net across this country everywhere? No, not all of our federal government does that.
Give me concrete examples of what that legislation, either proposed or future, would actually do.
Right.
How would it change the face of our buildings, our cities, to make accessibility more obvious?
At one point, if we moved it from a charitable conversation, to an imperative that this isn't negotiable. We're not saying, well, you're just lucky to get in the building, Mr. X or Mrs. Y. No, you're a Canadian. You get in the building. You're not just a passive participant. You're included in the building, and that's a big shift from an old model. Well, you're lucky to get access to. No, all Canadians are part of the country. They're not left behind, and so that's not an option. And it's time for us to measure up. By 2050, this country should be completely accessible for every Canadian.
Whenever I've listened to you, whenever I talk to you, this is the way you think. You're thinking forward.
Forward,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where so many people might think that someone in your position would just be angry.
Yeah. You know what, Peter, in my excitement, passion to make a difference and to achieve a vision that I started on over 30 years ago, I'm sometimes frustrated. I want the pace of change to be faster, but I feel more than anything grateful. I'm one of the luckiest Canadians alive, and it's a great country, and it's a place where dreams come true, and I think it's a responsibility for all of us to do our part. And no, how can you be angry at a privilege to live a life filled with love and meaning and purpose, and think your best work's still in front of you. Hope you can squeeze the next chapter, another year or two, or hopefully 10 or 20, and every breath, man, it's joy.
One of the things about you that's always made the biggest impression was an article that was written 6 years ago, in The Globe, by Sarah Hansen. And she asks you a question. Here's the way she wrote it. Does he hope that he'll walk again? I ask. For some, such as the late actor Christopher Reeve, rendered a quadriplegic in a riding accident, that hope sustains them. Mr. Hansen shakes his head, saying nothing. Has he given up hope that he might? He turns his eyes to look directly at me. No. One day it might work. Wouldn't that be cool? But is it something that I wake up every day wishing for? No. He shakes his head slowly again. Because my life is full.
True. Yeah. I said that. Yeah, no, I've come to realize that for sure. It's been, some of the toughest challenges, especially when you're young. No one would want to have that thrust on them. You wouldn't want it to be thrust on anyone. But, it's when adversity happens, sometimes it's the greatest lessons and it creates the greatest opportunities in life. And you realize that meaning isn't about being cured in order to be whole as a human being. And that's
There
been my
must have
journey.
been a point where you did have hope
Oh,
that things could change.
are you kidding? I mean, you know what? For 2 years, I every day, not just every moment that I woke up, every day of my waking life, even in my dreams, I would be walking, and I tried everything I could to get some movement in my legs, and I refused to believe that it was not possible to find a way to recover, and then of course slowly the reality is that no, it just wasn't going to happen, and so then came the choice. Where's the pain coming from? It wasn't in my legs. It was coming from my attitude. And that was the sovereignty that I still held. And I didn't have the internal perspective or strength to do it on my own. I needed role models and people who were there before me to show me that it was possible and show me the beauty of life in the pain and suffering, and to know that that's a mindfulness and a discipline and something that you can own. And I feel that's the greatest gift that's been given to me.